The silent landowner, you're making a mistake. Mr. Collins, this area's been rezoned. The land's worthless now. The city official had told me 5 years ago. I remember that day like a scar. My late father's 20-acre property, the one we used to camp on, fish from, and build tree houses in, was being pushed out by a fancy new HOA project. The Maple Ridge Luxury Estates, they called it. I called it theft. When my dad died, I inherited the land. I was too broken to fight anyone back then. The HOA claimed the zoning maps were unclear, and since I wasn't paying attention, they moved in, poured concrete, and started building homes. I could have stopped them early, but I didn't. Not yet. Let them build, I told my lawyer. He looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Ethan, they're stealing your land. I know, I said, looking out over the bulldozers tearing down my father's old barn, and I'm going to let them finish. For 2 years, I watched them. Every day, their trucks rolled in and out. Workers hammered nails into walls that weren't theirs, and realtors started taking pre-orders. Families walked around the lots dreaming of their futures. Nobody asked about the land's real owner, but I was there. I was always there, quiet, unnoticed, waiting. Then one afternoon I met her, Sarah, a single mother with a little girl named Lily. She waved at me as I sat near the property fence. "You looking to buy too?" she asked cheerfully. I smiled faintly. Something like that. She didn't know she was standing on my land. Over the next few months, I saw Sarah often. She'd bring Lily by to watch the houses go up. They reminded me of what my dad always said. Land is borrowed from our children, not stolen from our neighbors. And that's when it hit me. I wasn't just fighting for property. I was fighting for principle. When the HOA announced their grand opening, complete with champagne, ribbons, and fake smiles, I stood in the crowd wearing my dad's old hat. They called it a new chapter for Maple Ridge. I called it chapter 1 of their downfall. Because what they didn't know was that I'd spent the last 2 years gathering every document, every permit, every illegal move they'd made. My lawyer, the same one who thought I'd given up, had built a case so airtight that when it hit court, the HOA wouldn't know what buried them. But that day wasn't about revenge yet. That day was about patience. Because sometimes the best way to win is to let your enemy build your victory for you. By the time the HOA's luxury homes were complete, they'd sold every single one. 12 houses, each worth nearly $1 million, standing proudly on land that legally belonged to me. They thought I was invisible, a nobody. But I'd been keeping receipts. Every contract, every zoning adjustment, every unauthorized structure. I had everything. When my lawyer, Ben, filed the lawsuit, the shockwaves hit like an earthquake. The HOA board members panicked. Their president, Richard Lane, the same. Guy with slicked back hair who once told me to move on with your life, suddenly wanted to talk. He showed up at my doorstep one morning in his fancy black SUV. "Ethan," he said, stepping out with his fake smile, "surely we can work something out. You'll make a tidy profit if you just—" I cut him off. "You mean if I sell you back what's already mine?" He laughed awkwardly. "Let's be reasonable. You don't want to disrupt families who just moved in, right?" I looked him dead in the eye. "I didn't start this. You did. Now you'll live with it." When we walked into court 2 weeks later, every HOA member's face looked pale. The courtroom was packed. Reporters, homeowners, curious neighbors, everyone wanted to see the man who dared to fight an entire HOA empire. Ben stood tall beside me, his voice calm but cutting. "Your Honor, this isn't a misunderstanding. This is a deliberate act of land theft, concealed under falsified zoning, claims and fraudulent documents. The HOA's lawyer tried to dismiss it as a clerical error. But when we presented aerial maps, land deeds with my father's name, and witness testimonies, including a city clerk who admitted she'd been pressured to adjust the zoning, everything started to unravel. Then came the moment that broke the courtroom silence. Ben held up a printed email chain from Richard himself. It read, "Collins will never fight it. By the time he figures it out, we'll have the whole project done." The audience gasped. Richard's face went pale as chalk. I'll never forget the judge's words. "Mr. Collins, this court recognizes your rightful ownership of the land in question. The HOA and its developers acted unlawfully. You are entitled to full possession of the property and damages as determined by this court. It felt unreal. My dad's land, our land, was coming back. But as I looked over at the homeowners sitting behind the HOA table, families like Sarah and her little girl, I felt no joy. Just a strange, heavy silence. After court, Sarah approached me. "I don't know what happens now," she said softly. "My daughter just started school here." I looked at her, at the people who had unknowingly built their dreams on my soil. "You'll know soon," I said. "I'm not done yet." Because this fight wasn't about tearing down homes. It was about teaching a lesson in justice and humanity. 3 months after the verdict, the Maple Ridge HOA was gone, disbanded, bankrupt, and humiliated. The luxury homes they'd built stood quiet, their owners terrified of losing everything. Legally, the land was mine again. Every square foot, every house, every inch of concrete they'd poured on top of my father's soil. But victory didn't feel like I thought it would. I drove through Maple Ridge at sunset one evening. The neighborhood looked perfect. Clean sidewalks, trimmed lawns, kids' bikes parked by the mailboxes. Families were trying to hold on to some normalcy, but the uncertainty was eating them alive. I stopped in front of one house, Sarah. Little Lily was on the porch drawing with chalk, her mom sitting beside her. When Sarah saw me, she stood up nervously. "Are we supposed to leave?" she asked, her voice shaking. I took a deep breath. "No, you're supposed to listen." I walked up and handed her a letter. "It's a new agreement," I said. "You and the other homeowners aren't losing your houses. I'm transferring each property to its family for free." Her eyes widened. "Wait, you're giving them away?" I nodded. "Your HOA stole my father's land." But he taught me something they never understood. Land doesn't make you rich, integrity does. Tears filled her eyes as she tried to speak. "Why would you do that?" I smiled faintly. "Because I want my dad's land to mean something again. He believed people should earn what they build. You all built lives here. That matters." Word spread fast. Families came out of their houses, stunned, speechless. Some hugged me. Others cried. Even Richard Lane, the former HOA president, showed up. He stood there looking hollow. "I don't understand you, Collins. You could have taken it all." "I did," I said quietly, "but I chose to give it back. That's the difference between owning something and deserving it." The news went viral. I got letters from people all over the country, some thanking me, some confessing they'd been wronged by greedy corporations too. I realized this story wasn't just mine anymore. It was a reminder to everyone that sometimes doing the right thing costs you, but it also frees you. A week later, I visited my father's old oak tree at the edge of the property. I placed my hand on the trunk and whispered, "It's done, Dad. They built on your land, but now they're living your lesson." As the wind rustled the leaves, I felt peace for the first time in years. The land wasn't just mine anymore. It belonged to the people who'd learned what it truly meant to value it. Justice isn't about revenge, it's about restoring what's right. If life ever takes something from you, don't rush to destroy it. Wait, build your case. Then reclaim it with integrity and maybe, just maybe, make the world a little better in the process.